Well, good afternoon. It is December 11th, and this is episode, I can't believe it, this is episode 54 of the
54?
Bob and Bill podcast.
Does that mean you've been doing 2 a year?
Yeah, thanks. I wish I was 54. That would be nice. But Robert is not with us today. We're obviously pre-recording, and you were at our hymn sing today, our Thanksgiving hymn sing. For those of you that are watching that have never even been to America's Keswick, which there are a lot of people that are watching these around the world. I don't understand this.
Really?
Yeah. This is my friend Michael Faircloth. We got to know each other 30 years ago.
30 years.
I can't believe
it. Is it only 30 years? It seems longer.
It seems longer. Some days it seems longer.
It does. Yeah.
I met you. You were the artist in residence at Sandy Cove.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And that's how we met. And so we're going to have some fun talking about your life.
We are.
I had a whole bunch of questions that I thought I could ask
you. He didn't give me any warning at all about what we'd be talking about. So
have I ever given you warning?
No, and but I
was good. I left off the questions that I thought might not be airable.
That I might find embarrassing or something like that.
So how long have you been playing the piano, and how did you get started in music ministry?
How long have I been playing? That's going to be. It's going to take Common Core math for me to figure that out. But actually, I started. Let's see. I started when I was 7. I am 57 years old, so I've been playing the piano.
You're 57.
I am 57. Wow. Well on my way to 58.
Wow.
So I have been playing the piano for 50 years. That is news.
Isn't that weird?
I had not thought about that. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah. What was the other question?
How did you get started in music ministry?
Well. I don't know whether I've ever told you this or not, but when I was a kid, I lived 9 houses down the street from my grandparents, and my grandmother had a great big stereo that was in a piece of furniture. Do you remember back in the days when they would put record players and radios in a...
Record players are coming back.
They're back.
Yeah,
they are
crazy.
back. So yeah, they know about those, but they used to be in big pieces of furniture in the middle of somebody's living room, and my grandmother would have records of a lot of them were like old Southern gospel quartets and that sort of thing, and I would go out to her house and put those on, and then crawl up on the arm of the couch and pretend I was playing, because we didn't have a piano, she didn't have a piano. And I did that so frequently that my family, my grandparents and my parents decided that, well, maybe he's interested in the piano. So for my 7th birthday, Mom and Dad bought a spinet piano, and I started taking piano lessons in my little hometown of Aberdeen, Maryland. And I knew early on, I mean, church music was my first love. My piano lessons were in classical music, but I just loved the music of the church. So pretty early on, from the time I was 7 years old, I knew that I wanted to play church music. And 50 years later, I'm still playing church music.
Well, that's kind of ironic, because I've never told anybody this story, but that's how I started.
No.
I remember being in my parents' bedroom.
Yeah.
And we had a little record player, and they had, for some reason, they had a lot of George Beverly Shea.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling up the chair, sitting at the windowsill, and,
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I thought maybe I was just really weird.
So for anybody that's watching, if you have a child or a grandchild that pretends they're playing the piano all the time, maybe there's something to it, I guess.
So tell us about your formal training, and how has that played in you crafting what you do as a musician?
Well, like I told you, from day one, I started studying classical piano. I mean, the teacher I had actually didn't teach me how to play hymns. She taught me how to play classical music. And so, that the love for that was cultivated over time. It wasn't my first love. When I first started going to her, I still would have, I wanted to go home and play hymns. I didn't want to go home and practice what she was giving me. But over time, that had an influence. And, as I came to appreciate some of the great works of art in classical music, I thought, well, is there, maybe I can combine these two things and let the classical music influence my arranging and my playing. And I wouldn't say necessarily that my style is all that much classical, but a lot of things that the teachers talked about in terms of making a melody sing. I remember I had one teacher that said, you need to phrase that like a good singer would sing it. And I've had the privilege to work with a few good singers over the years, and eventually that started to kick in, and about how to shape a phrase and to communicate the melodic line with a sense of musicality that I think perhaps I wouldn't have had if I hadn't studied classical music.
So there are a lot of folks, obviously, that don't know who you are. You probably have hundreds of folks that watch our podcast every week that are familiar with your ministry. So for the new people, why don't you play something for us?
Oh, okay, I think I can do that. We sang the worship chorus 10,000 Reasons this morning, and I love that, and I find that lots of people love it. And the nice thing about it is younger people like it and older people like it. It kind of transcends the generations, and it's a wonderful, simple little song of praise that has kind of a haunting melody. So I think I'll do that one,
Good.
10,000 Reasons.
Now, you have a couple CDs. Is that arrangement on a CD?
It's
Because
not.
somebody, it's not.
It's not. I haven't recorded it yet.
Well, why not?
Well, I don't know. I'll put it on the
You
list.
need to do that.
I need to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so they're pianists and they're artists. You have the unique ability to do stuff as a solo artist, but you also have a gift of accompanying people. I think there's a big difference in that. What is the difference?
For one thing, I think you have to learn to listen to the singer. Particularly if you're an instrumental soloist, it's easy to kind of get caught up in what you're doing, and you don't hear the music as being wedded together, and so you're kind of doing your own thing. But particularly if you're working with a singer that where you can play off of each other, and you know when the singer speeds up a little bit or there's a crescendo, to sort of follow, and then even to answer, to that interchange. It's a wonderful thing, and it makes the music that much more rewarding, I think, and pleasant to listen to. But I guess I would say the most important thing is to listen to the singer and make sure that what you're doing is complementing them competing with them.
Okay, so tell us about some of the people and the groups that you have accompanied over the years,
Oh my goodness.
including what you're currently doing.
I'm currently serving as the accompanist with the National Christian Choir, which is based out of Washington, D.C., and I do love that. And even what we did this morning here, having the hymn sings at Keswick, and hearing the people of God getting together in corporate worship. I've always enjoyed that, but the older I get, I really do enjoy it as much or more than playing solos, and I say that sincerely. But yeah, about 10 years ago, I started accompanying the National Christian Choir, and that's just been a great experience because it's, a Washington, D.C. based choir with about 150 or so members, and they get together and they do it because they have a passion for worship, and they love the joy of singing with other believers and offering their praise to God. So I do thoroughly enjoy that, but then I still get to work with soloists every now and then. Our mutual friend Diane Susek, who she and I have worked together probably as long as I've known you, probably 30 years most likely too. And so I always enjoy working with her. And actually, she and Tim Zimmerman, who's the head of the King's Brass, one of the founders of the King's Brass, we are supposed to be, Lord willing, in Texas next weekend, and it'll be kind of a reunion for us because we used to do concerts, the three of us together, many years ago, and we haven't done one in probably at least 15 or 20 years, and so we're going to have a little reunion down outside of Dallas.
So this is kind of a weird question, and it's something that I have grappled with because, like Robert is very gifted in that he can play the notes on the page. He can play something in any key.
Yeah, he is so good.
And without music.
I know.
And he plays a lot by ear. You don't play by ear, or do you?
I do. If it's Amazing Grace or, It Is Well With My Soul. If the chords are a little more complicated, then, you have to work on it in advance. So, but I'm not that guy where everybody gathers around the piano and, can play any favorite that anybody wants in any key. I'm
Okay, so this is what and you may not have an explanation for this because this may be just how God has gifted you, but I love the fact that you can open a hymn book and you've got 4 notes on the page, and somehow you turn those 4 notes into a masterful accompaniment. Like today when we did the Majesty and Glory of Your Name.
That's so
I
pretty.
mean, it was really hard for me to sing because I was so emotionally wrapped up with. How do you explain that?
Well, for me, first of all, in terms of musically, how do you explain it? I like to think about the accompaniment orchestrally. In other words, when I was playing the Majesty and Glory of Your Name, I was kind of thinking, the violins are here, the brass is here, and you sort of voice things out as you think about how an orchestra would play it. But back to the notion of playing by ear, probably if I practiced harder and worked at it, I could be better at that. But as long as I have even just just a simple hymn arrangement, or even really just a chord chart, if the chords aren't real complicated, that gives me. It's like the scaffolding that I can sort of hold on to, and I feel more confident to, to do more dramatic things around that. So I have a certain measure of confidence in play. If I have a little something in front of me that I can embellish, I just don't feel quite as confident if it has to all come out of here without anything in front of me. But yeah, I would say thinking orchestrally is what really helps in terms of filling out an accompaniment for a congregation.
So why don't you do another song for us?
Oh, okay. Well, I have to. I got one done, but let me think. Here's another little short one.
Okay, good. I share with the folks at the hymn sing that I don't know why this just burned into the hard drive of my mind, but we were at Sandy Cove and Henry Slaughter was there with Hazel for the conference. And I remember after you played, he got up and said, when Michael plays, I can see the words. And as you play, I just visualize the lyrics of a song. It's really amazing.
Yeah, well, and I think, I hope part of that is the Holy Spirit, but I do think it also goes back to what I told you about with my, teachers talking about phrasing, like a good singer would sing it, and I think that's part of that. But I do hope that, the Lord brings the words to our minds as well.
Now, most of your CDs are Christian CDs, but you do have a secular CD.
I do, yeah.
And a fun one.
Yeah, it's called The Glory of Love, and it's old pop tunes from mostly American composers like George and Ira Gershwin and Cole Porter, and it actually, ironically, it gets more radio airplay than anything I've ever done. So
well, if you're an XM radio listener, and I believe it's on the Escape
I think it is
channel.
on the Escape channel.
I almost had an accident one day. We're driving down the road, and I thought, I know that tune.
I think it's the White Cliffs of Dover.
It's the White Cliffs of Dover.
That's what they play all the time.
So it's really cool. There's your name.
My name
scrolls
pops up
there,
on your car XM screen. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that ended up happening, but for some reason or another, of everything I've recorded, the White Cliffs of Dover is the one that everybody seems to listen to the most.
Well, that's kind of cool. Okay, so what's your most embarrassing moment that you've had? Now, I could give like all kinds of illustrations, but
yeah, I bet you could. Well, there have been so many that's a little hard to narrow it down. I remember once, years ago, that Tim Zimmerman and I were at Founders Week at Moody Bible Institute, and which, for me was a big deal. That was it wasn't like playing at the for 5 people at a little church on Sunday. It was a big deal. And Tim has an arrangement of Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho that has 2 versions, and one of them is the one that he and I would do when it was just piano and trumpet. And there's like a version that isn't quite as filled out because it's the version we do when we have a full brass ensemble. So the piano part is much simpler and more sparse, and it doesn't stand well on its own. There aren't enough notes there to fill in everything. Well, we were live on the Moody Satellite Network, and it was our time to do Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho, and we started, and I realized that I had the version that was for the ensemble, not the version for the piano. So, and as I have admitted freely, and as of you have pointed out, I'm not great at improvising if there isn't at least something to hang on to, particularly not in that style, because it's kind of a jazz style. It's not where my fingers go to naturally. And so there we were, live on the Moody Satellite around the world, and I was stumbling through every single measure of Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho. It was really poorly done, and probably I'm just amazed that I'm still able to play the piano publicly, because I'm sure people are on the other end thinking, where in the world did they get him? Because it was pretty bad.
I've got so many funny moments, but I think the most recent one was we were doing what do they call that conference? The Old Timers Conference at Sandy Cove.
Seniors Week or something
yeah,
like that.
and it was a weekend, and you were going to play your patriotic medley. So I thought, wow, I'm going to record that on my cell phone. And there I am recording, and it was an amazing arrangement. And then you started embellishing. You were playing things that I had never heard in that arrangement.
I felt inspired.
Remember? And then all of a sudden you realized you were so lost. You stopped and said, It was a great moment.
Well, that arrangement also has 2 versions. And there's one point at which, it's a little bit like when you get to the end of the road and you want to decide whether you go left or right, and I needed to go right and I went left, and there was just no getting back, it seems. So I've had more than one of those.
Yeah, and if you really want to know when he's lost, like he tends to lean into the piano.
I do. I look like Schroeder.
Yeah, I remember at one Christmastide program we did, and you were playing a little town of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And I think you went to Egypt, Bethlehem.
I was going to say, I probably ended up in some distant city, but because when I lean in, I'm like trying to focus and think, okay, where am I? So, but I have gotten a little better at kind of
fudging.
making it sound like I know what I'm doing when I really don't.
Well, and the trouble is, we all have your CDs.
That's right, you know my stuff
and we
too
know
well.
all your stuff. So when
Yeah.
there's a detour,
Yeah, you're very much
we're
aware
right
of
there,
it.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the most meaningful time in your ministry of music? That maybe there's an event or a time that I don't know, it was just something extraordinary and special.
You know, right at the moment, there's not one singular one, but there have been lots of moments. Well, maybe a little bit like we were talking about with the majesty and glory of your name that you talked about this morning, when with a congregation, either here or in one of my concerts or something, where you play a song and there is just a sense that the Holy Spirit is really applying that to the hearts of the people that are listening. It happens a lot with old hymns. I mean, there have been many moments when I've played It Is Well With My Soul. In fact, it just comes to my mind right now. Last Sunday at church, we closed the service with It Is Well With My Soul. And you know, we sing that probably every few months. But it ended, and there was just sort of like this a sense of release and a sense that in the midst of all of the uncertainty and that we're in which we find ourselves right now, that there is this sustaining peace that has its source in the throne room of heaven, and it transcends every earthly circumstance. And so it's those moments, and you know, it's funny you say that, because as I'm sitting here, the Lord just reminded me of last Sunday, because you know, in my little church, which is not huge, that was a moment when we sensed that the Spirit of the Lord was reminding all of us of a very important truth that we needed for that moment.
Worship continues to divide us. Not you and me.
No, right.
But it divides the church. What is it that encourages you about worship today, and what are the concerns that you have with worship?
I do think that there are younger people who have acknowledged that our worship had become quite performance oriented, and that it frequently has focused on us more than focusing on God. By its very definition, worship, it's not about us, it's about God. So, you know, if we're coming together in church and singing songs that talk more about how we feel about things rather than recounting the virtues of God and his immutable traits and the truth of his word and eternal truths that transcend our temporary emotions and our feelings about ourselves. Worship needs to be focused on that. Now, stylistically, the style may be different. There's plenty of things that just aren't quite, you know, I don't quite get it. It's not my style. But if someone is singing truth, I can rejoice in the fact that truth is being spoken. And I think that the church as a whole, instead of having worship wars, should get to the place where we can acknowledge that. If we're singing things that aren't true, then we need to deal with that. If we're singing things that are true, but we're singing it in different ways, then that's where we need to give each other a little bit more grace. And even when it's not quite my style, I need to be willing to give my brothers and sisters who see it differently some room to express their praise to God in a way that is authentic for them, just as they need to offer that same grace back to me.
It's kind of neat that we got to grow up in an era where we've been able to listen to styles of music that most young people will never, ever experience. So that's what I love about the hymn sings. We can still do the old hymns that have such rich meaning, but yet we're still able to do, Robert and Joyce will do a contemporary song, and it still ministers to people.
Well, and, you know, and at my church, there are younger people there, and I'm sure that what they listen to during the week is not what we do in church on Sunday. But when we sang It As Well With My Soul Sunday, that was not limited to just a certain age. That was a universal response in that congregation, and that's a real blessing.
Yeah, and I wish that pastors and music leaders would understand that, because there is a difference. We go to a wonderful church in Barnegat, New Jersey, and the music is contemporary, and it's very well done. But there's a completely different atmosphere and even a volume level when they put a hymn in the service.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there might be a young person that's watching the podcast who has gifts and abilities and would like to follow along the same track that you have walked. What would you encourage them to do at this point?
Make sure you're called to do it. And part of determining that calling, I think, would mean that there are probably people around you who are either, and not just your closest friends and family, who are recognizing that perhaps God has given you a gift. Because, chances are good mom and dad and grandma and grandpa think you're good at what you do, but to do other people seem to be responding. So so it's a little bit like preaching, I mean, if you just because you want to do it doesn't mean you're called to do it. Right. So you first have to determine that. Once that determination is made, then I think the next step is you've got to hone your craft and practice and make sure that you're doing what you do to the glory of God in terms of offering your best and seeking excellence. Now, God is not pleased with our worship because it's perfect. So we don't do it to impress others or even to impress Him, but to glorify Him, we give our best effort. And when we fall short, He still accepts our worship, but He's worthy of excellence in worship. So we want to, you want to hone your craft. So I would say make sure you're called, and then once you've determined that you are, work hard at it, and God will provide doors. I remember once a well-known Christian artist, when I was trying to figure out what my future would be, he wrote to me in a letter and said, if you love God and serve Him with the same intensity that you have for studying the piano, He will open all the right doors of opportunity for you. And I thought that was good advice.
So if somebody's watching today and wants to get one of your CDs, how can they do that?
I think they can go to iTunes. I think they can go to Amazon.com. I think that's where they are. And I would say iTunes and Amazon are your best.
I think you're on Spotify.
Am I on Spotify?
You're on
See,
Spotify
I'm in places
too.
where I don't know I am, so I frequently don't know where I am, as a matter of fact.
Well, let's have you close with a song, and I'm going to pick.
Oh, okay.
What I could pick. Why don't you do How Great Thou Art?
Okay, I thought you said I only had to play two, so you're.
I know, but it's.
That's good. I think I can.
I love that arrangement.
You knew I could handle that one,
Yep.
probably without much practice. So.
want to remind you that our next event here at America's Keswick is our New Year's Eve concert. We're going to do something a little different. Obviously, we're still living in the COVID environment.
I was going to say, are we actually going to be able to say goodbye to 2020?
I can't wait for 2020 to be done, and I hope 2021 doesn't look like this.
Oh, let's pray.
But we're limited to 150 people, and some of you that have been here in the past know we normally have 550 for that dinner concert. But we're going to do a concert at 10 a.m. on New Year's Eve, followed by the meal. And then we'll do the same thing for the evening. 6:30, the doors open, we'll do the meal, and then we'll do the concert. Our concert artist this year is Tiffany Coburn. Tiffany,
she is excellent.
She is
really
amazing.
incredible.
She's on the team at First Baptist of Orlando.
Yeah.
She also serves at Disney. She's actually the one that's leading the Voices, Voices in Liberty.
Yeah, at
the Epcot.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The Rotunda.
Oh, yeah, Rotunda at yeah.
And like she is like up in the stratosphere.
Her range is unbelievable, but she's a really musical singer, and yeah, she's great.
And she's also with a group called Voktov, and they all came out of Regeneration, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So you don't want to. This will be our first time here at America's Keswick. The cost of the meal is $20. If you'd like to make a reservation, call 1-800-453-7942. Or you can make a reservation online, www.americaskeswick.org. And a reminder that all of our podcasts are at 2:30 Monday through Friday. They're available on Facebook Live, Boxcast, and YouTube. And every day, Monday through Friday, Robert and Joyce do what's called Worship Live. That's at 1:30. So as you get ready for the weekend, please be sure to join us next week for all of our podcasts and Worship Live. Thanks for doing this today.
It was fun.
I really enjoyed that, and we look forward to you coming back to America's Keswick.
I'll be back.
Have a great weekend, and God bless you.
See you.